that's how most people should live their lives. But at the end of the day, like, to be offended by a joke, I don't know. Yeah. So what do we want to get into today?
Yeah. Well, tell you what, do you want to just give an overview of who you are, what you do, and we can sort of go from there for anyone who's never seen your stuff on LinkedIn?
Yeah. So let's get started. I guess, yeah, I'm Will McGhee. I've been in the recruiting game for over about a decade and some change now. And I've seen it all, a lot of it, I should say, at least. I'm always trying to learn. I started in a big agency, kind of fell into it just like everyone else does. I only know one person. His name's Jace Monroe, I've ever known that was like, I'm going to be a recruiter when I grow up. And he's actually a very good recruiter. But yeah, like everybody else kind of fell into it. I've never heard it either. He's literally the only person. So I fell into it after sales. I did real estate for a little bit. I did co-location for a little bit. It was too stuffy for me. And then I was on a train with a friend, and they were like, "Yeah, let's get into, like, you should talk to my boyfriend. He works at this company called Cybercoders." Cybercoders was like 125 people at the time. I was like number 126 or something. And it was awesome. I was like, how do you, like, I'd never seen that kind of earning potential in a company at that young of an age. I was like 24 years old, making like 180 grand a year. Like, that was insane to me. Right. And it was awesome. It just fell naturally. I had great mentors. Was a consistent top biller there. I think I had 1 year that I did, I think I did like 325 in billing. And it's funny. I always talk about this with like other recruiters. I'm like, I never realized how much we were billing as a company, as individuals. I always thought like I was a good biller. I thought I was like on the top 20%, top 10% kind of thing. Like, cause I was always in that realm. I was either like one of 10 in every company I've ever been. And I was like, oh, that just doesn't seem like a lot. And then I would talk to other recruiting agencies, and I would jump into like other recruiting companies that would try and interview me. And they would be like, I'd be like, who's your top biller? And they're like, oh, this guy over here, he's doing like 195 and he's killing it. And I'm like, what? Like, if I was doing 195, I would be getting like canned immediately at Cybercoders, right? So this like environment of like high producing, high billing environment was awesome. And it kind of skewed my vision of like what successful recruiting looks like. I went to, it was good. I got to like a lead role. I was like managing some people, and kind of realized like, I don't know, like I didn't like where Cybercoders was going, and it was a lot of like mass emailing, and I thought there was like a better way, and I wanted to like develop more marketing skills. So I went into another British company that was trying to enter the US market. And that company was really interesting. They were really specialized. They didn't have any technology behind them. So like, it was like Magento engineers and like big commerce and e-commerce engineers. So it was like really, really, really niche per recruiter. And I'm really thankful for them, because they actually showed me like what specialty recruiting looks like, and how to like create, your niche and your market, and like go after this stuff. And I came in as a director of business development. I didn't really want to be a producer at that time. So I came in and I managed a team. We were able to bring in like a good pipeline. I think we brought in like 500,000 in my first like 3 to 6 months there, pipeline business, which was really great. Was able to manage some people to get them to like do their first deal, and but at the same time, like the thing I had a problem with was like kind of this micromanaging piece to it that like I'm not very used to, and I don't really work well in, which was like, get in at 8. If you're 2 minutes late, you're late. If you're going to lunch, you got to be at lunch, for an hour, you got to get back, like phone calls. And and I'm going to tell a secret that most people don't know. I haven't done a cold call, and I've consistently billed, like, I haven't done a cold call in probably like 7 years, like on the business development side. On the client side, I do cold calls all the time, but on the business development side, I don't really do cold calls, like, because like there's a better way, right? Like I think there's like I think warm calling is better. I think it's just easier. I think it's warm calling is better on the candidate side too. So like I haven't really done cold calls in a long time, and so like when they were pushing cold calls, and I'm like I built like 500 600K, like I don't need to do cold calls, like I've never done that. So but anyway, couldn't get into that. Like I was like, I'm gonna go out on my own. Started at Tima, which is kind of like a franchise model. It's like a step up. You're starting in like you create your own LLC, you build out your own thing, and you build your own business. And like there, I crushed it. I loved it there. Great network of people, awesome managers. Shout out to Andrea Rishmawi. She was like one of my mentors there. And shout out to Neethu Galati and Jason Kuna, who were my mentors at Cybercoders. I love them. They're my peoples. But like it was interesting because like it allowed me to kind of play in the entrepreneurial space without having to take so much risk, having support and all that stuff. And that was good. I got a short stint at a Cybercoders competitor. I won't mention the name. But yeah, like they sold me on something that wasn't going to be true, which is like we were doing stuff different. And I was like,
surely not in the
I don't want to do mass me. Yeah. I was like, I don't want to do mass emailing. Like if you guys are going to do mass emailing and you're going to just spam people, like I'm all about relationships. I want to have like a small team. Like let's dominate, you know, let's be strategic on how we grow, and we can like, you know, show people how to do this properly. Yeah, we'll do that. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, but I also don't want to produce. Like, that's not where, if I'm moving from what I'm doing right now, I was making like, you know, $500,000 a year doing my thing. I was like, I don't really want to move that desk and go to you and just like, I'm not going to come in here and do business development. Like, that's not what's going to happen. Like, I'm here, I'm going to help you build out a team. And then I want something different. And, yeah, it was all a lie. So it ended up being a whole lie. I was like, I saw the writing on the wall right away. 2020, I was like, I'm gonna go start my own thing and like actually just do it myself. And my wife and I moved to Orange County. We bought a house, and we decided to go into A Talent. And A Talent, we started February 1st, 2020, and we all know what happened in 2020. Like right when we started, closed our first deal, like 2 weeks in, Christina crushed it. Like I showed her the ropes. And yeah, pandemic hit, and I freaked out. I was like, I didn't have the qualifications for a PPP loan. We had just put all our money into our house. I was scared, man. Like I was running scared. Had to keep it together because you know,
like how much money did you have and how much time?
I had like 5 months maximum 5 months, right? With that deal, it allowed us to get an additional month or two because with that deal it was but it wasn't going to be paid for like 30 16 or actually 90 days because it was a split that I did. So we didn't even do like a full desk deal on that one. That was a split deal. So I wasn't going to get paid for 90 days. And then with the economy and everything that was happening and pandemic, everybody's getting laid off or furloughed. I was freaked out. I was like, we're not going to get paid on this. I literally looked at my wife. I was like, this is not going to come in. Luckily it did. So we got some headway and we were cool, but yeah, 5-6 months, like maximum. And luckily, you know, there were some programs on like, you know, your mortgage and stuff like that and like helping people out. So, you know, Christine and I got on that and we were able to like kind of navigate, but it still wasn't like, we still weren't really making ends meet. Like it wasn't like we were like, a lot of our friends who own businesses were like just getting PPP loans and then like going and buying TVs and stuff. We were like still very strapped. Like we weren't doing a damn thing. Like we were eating ramen, right? And but like we just focused on what we could control, right? We just focused on like creating content, getting our name out, building a brand, and really just making connections with like hiring managers and talent that we wanted to work with. And it was like the perfect time to do that because, you know, everybody was kind of freaking out and not doing any work. So we were doing the work, and in June, it all switched. Like everything switched. It just went from, oh, this sucks. Now we have too many roles that we need to fill. and we were just like firing away. And all that work that we did, creating a talent and like playing with automation and technology and testing out all this stuff, really paid off. And by the end of November or December, we had accumulated like 300K in billing. And that was just like, just a true wholehearted effort. We brought on our first partner program member. And then in 2021, we did 897, I think. And that was just like, that was in our sleep. Like we didn't really like do a whole lot. Like we were working probably 5 hours a day. Fridays were always off. We traveled a lot. We went out, we did our thing. We partied a little bit too hard sometimes. And, my wife and I just like lived the dream. And then, 2022, we had, in 2021, is it 2021? 2021, we had our baby. Yeah. Kaya was born 2021. So baby came out May 2021. And then like 2022, we were just like, okay, like let's go enjoy this family thing. And
well,
we won't do anymore. Yeah.
That year you did 897, you said it was, right?
Yeah, like 896 or something like that, yeah.
What were you doing? Because I know many recruitment companies, especially like two-man bands, would love to do that. Like, how were you able to achieve such an incredible number between two people working 5 hours a day?
I mean, we were just really targeted, to be honest. Like that, I think that was the key to our success is we targeted and we validated roles before ever starting to work on them. So one of the things that you talk about is productizing your business. We brought on, like in that time there was so like, let me take a step back. A lot of recruiters talk about niching, and I think niching is fantastic, but you're seeing the problems with being too narrowly niched right now. People who are in tech and only did software engineers are hurting right now because there was I think 60% of the demand in tech has dropped, right? And it's all in startups now. And guess what? Startups aren't getting funded, so they're not going to scale to the level of like Facebook and stuff like that. So you have very few roles with a lot of candidates, and then you're getting a lot of these candidates are getting displaced by ChatGPT and LLM and all this like no code solutions. So now you got all this like stuff happening, and a lot of like recruiters are like, well, I have this great I had a recruiter call me or hit me up on LinkedIn the other day. I've got fantastic Golang candidates and I'm just not getting any business. And another one came up. I have fantastic Scala candidates and I'm just not getting any business. And I'm like, well, are you validating your market? Like, is there demand there? Is there like, are you just doing Scala because someone told you to do Scala and you heard that it was great? Like, or is there genuine demand and a really low candidate pool? And the fact that they're not validating is like one of the biggest things. So, and then like when they do get a client, it's often like these like low hanging fruit clients. Cause who's using recruiters right now when you have a plethora of talent on the market, and then you have all these sourcing tools in this space. And why do you need a recruiter? Like why? Like you probably need like one or two people in the software engineering space. Right. But at the end of the day, like they just, we validated everything, made sure that like this was a viable role, and then we mushroom accounts. So, we look at the industry, we validate the industry, validate the roles, and then, we validate our candidates. And then once we get in, we don't stop. So we did that with like 10 or 12 clients that year. So now that's not the only clients we picked up. It was just those 10 or 12 clients that we actually ended up billing with. And we just focused. So whenever we could get one candidate, one role, we would do, let me take a step back again. So to answer your question, how did we do it? It was validation, highly targeted approach and engagement. Once we got engagement, and we got agreements, we would then pull candidates in and we try to mushroom them out. Though, like, we try and get 5 or 6 positions for that candidate. And so the only way we could do that well enough was not just doing it on our own with our own business development. It was with partnering with other agencies and other smaller independent recruiters who might also have those types of roles. So we would do a lot of 50-50 splits.
Right. Okay.
So there was a lot of 50-50 splits, and some of the recruiters out there are like, oh, I don't trust anybody. Well, start finding people you can trust and partner with them, because they have a network and they have a book of business that you don't have to, like, break your back to get anymore. And I have no problems with taking a 50% fee of 30% or 20% on a 180 or 190K role. So we did a lot of that. And then whenever we got into those accounts, we then expanded into those accounts through, like, their accounting department or their marketing department or whatever we could. And then in hot industries with high turnover, think construction, think sales, think mortgage industry. And at that time, mortgage industry was really hot. So I'll give that as an example. We would productize our business, and our productization was all about making sure that we were getting a monthly retainer that got paid monthly, no guarantees because it was so fast turnover. And we would just go in and say, hey, we're going to provide you great candidates. We're going to help you place them. You're not going to pay $30,000 per candidate. You're going to pay us a flat fee. You can hire as many of them as you want. And then if we have success, we get a bonus on top of it. So, like, that was kind of our structure. And it was a really great model. That model earned us like $80K that year on one client. And, we just crushed it for them. They love us. They would come back to us anytime. But, as you know, the mortgage industry started to fail. And so we got out of it. But that's why I say, like, niching is great and you should niche. You should present niching. But you got to follow the money. Like, you got to follow the market. And, if you look at, like, what's happening in the government in the US, for example, where's all the money going, right? It's private, it's public sector. And Biden just put out the economic stimulus plan. So his whole economic stimulus plan's all around manufacturing. So guess where I'm going to be if I'm going to jump into the market? I'm going to be in manufacturing. I'm going to be in the public sector if I know that sector, right? So, like, follow that money, follow where you are, and then, like, then you can actually do that. But, like, don't overly niche, because when you do, you're just, like, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Like, you can sell candidates, like, yeah, like, don't go and do 17 different verticals, but if you have 3 verticals you can focus on that have a really strong, correlation, then you should be doing it. So yeah. And then A Talent crushed 2022. We just kind of, like, my wife wanted to, like, pursue some TikTok and Instagram stuff, so I was like, okay, let's do that. And we just like allowed ourselves to, like, just have fun that year, be with our daughter. And then that's when kind of Recruiting with Dynamite came out. I was like, I really want to do something that I'm really excited about and I'm really passionate about. And it all came down to, like, business models and copy and, automation and things that I was, like, really happy about and excited about. And then ChatGPT hit, and I was like, let's do this. Like, we're ready now. Like, it is on. Like, things are going to change, and they have. So now we're a full-fledged, consultancy. So
yeah. So this is where it gets really interesting for me around what you do now, because I know obviously we had a chat before, and we went into you went into stuff deep around, like, messaging sequences and stuff, which I'm slowly learning about, but I think it's one of the most important things and skills that recruiters have to, and anyone in business development actually needs to learn about, because I get a lot of, like, recruiters, for example, messaging me about, I can't win clients, and one of the first things I ask them now is, send me the emails you're sending. just because I think it's a really good. If their emails are crap, right? This is what I find anyway. If their emails are crap, it probably means their sales scripts are crap. It probably means their LinkedIn messages are crap. It probably means their job ads are crap, and it probably means their candidate qualification and everything else is crap, and how they're attracting talent is crap. So, I think it's a really good place to start. And I find, even though I'm not, like, an expert like you are, there's so many things you can fix off the bat. And just to take it from like a 2 out of 10 to a 7 out of 10 can make an enormous difference, right?
Yeah.
Like I give you another example. I had someone email me the other day. I did a LinkedIn post about it today, I think. But they emailed me a few weeks ago, and they were like, "Can you take a look at our emails?" And they every single follow up started with like just circling back, just the typical
circling
emails
back, putting this at the top of your inbox. Like, yeah, come on, we got better things to do than that.
So yeah, anyway, over to you. Tell us some stuff about messaging sequencing. What should recruiters and business development people be doing? How do you build a message sequence to get you more replies? I know you've got so much to talk about on this subject, so I'll just let you speak.
Oh, man. I could go deep and wide on this. I'm going to try and keep this as tight as possible. So first things first, right? What I talk about in the beginning is validating your market. You have to understand where your market is, and you have to understand your market. So a lot of times what recruiters end up doing is in the same example I gave with the Scala and Golang person, they get put into recruiting and they say, here's the market that you're going to go after. They're not told exactly what that market is. They might do some research. They might understand what Golang does and why they might use it or whatever it might do. But they really don't understand like what is happening and what pains are being solved by that candidate, right? And so what ends up happening is a lot of recruiters will then go out and then pitch service. And it's the worst thing you can possibly do. I'm kind of in a little bit of a LinkedIn tiff right now with another recruiting podcast guy about this. And it's funny because like this concept of pitching service to me is not lost, because that's something I thought too when I went and started my own business. And it is farthest from the truth. Like, no one cares about your service. No one cares about how you go find candidates. They want to know, can you get me a great candidate and can you place them? Because you aren't the solution. Your candidate is the solution. So the first thing I always tell people is, instead of like pitching service in your copy, and once you understand your market and you validated it and you understand what your candidate does for your end user or your hiring managers, and for the company, you need to create angles, or in what I mean by angles is like the angle in which you're going to approach the client on the pain or on the aspiration. We call it the before and after state. So what was their life like before they had these candidates in play, and what is their life like after they have these candidates in play? And that aspirational after state is what you are tapping into, and that's the part of the copy that you want to bring to the table. So you're talking about your candidate and how they're going to influence the company, the team, the person, and then that's that personalization piece, right? But I don't really believe in a whole lot of personalization. I know there's a lot of comments on there on personalization and everything that's out there about like having to create, like go one by one. I don't think you have to. I think you can contextualize deeply. And the way you contextualize is, and it'll seem personalized. Like, so the way you contextualize is you go to a specific segment in the market. Let's say, I'm going to use tech, but I'm going to use tech because that's what I know the most. But it's hard to do this in tech right now. But let's say Series A to Series C companies, 60 to 100 million in funding, that are in the B2B SaaS space, that are that have 300 or some odd more, 300 to 2,000 people in their company, right? Something like that, right? That's a really, really specific market. Now, if you segment it further and you say, hey, I want to only look at benefits candidates, so I'm looking at Gusto, or companies that are looking or are likely to exit. So you're creating these like observation points, like how long has it been since they got their funding and all this stuff. So you're doing all this prep work before and getting the similarities of the companies that your candidate worked at. You don't do it on the thing that like you are hoping that they want, right? So you have to go based on what your candidate's experience was, and you kind of reverse engineer all that data, and then you create these like great messages about the candidate and how they've influenced the growth of those companies and how they can do that for this company and for this team. And now you have a better message. But again, if you don't have demand for that candidate, it's going to fall on deaf ears, right? No one's going to care. So you need to ensure that there's demand. It's a growing industry and you have a great candidate within that industry and with that title, right? So that's kind of how I approach all my BD. And when I do that, it blows up and it turns on right away. So I'll stop there. Do you have any questions on that? Like, because I can go deeper.
Yeah, I do actually. So one thing that you've mentioned a few times is obviously validating a market. And this is something that resonates with me because I've been in a situation a few times in my career where I was working a super tight niche. Okay, I'll give an example. So I used to do like QA, SDET, test engineer, recruitment. And I did it in one particular location. Worked fantastically. I was one of the top billers. And then I went and did it in a different location about a year later in a far more saturated location. It was actually London that I moved my location to. And it was basically a complete waste of a year.
Yeah.
How do you go about actually validating a market without is it possible you can just is it possible you can validate it without actually working that market for say a month, trialing it and seeing what happens?
Yeah, no, I think the big part, like one of the things that we do with our like we just finished our cohort and our cohort, I think a lot of them thought that we were just going to do a bunch of templates and do, some strategy. And I was like, the first 2 days of our first 2 weeks of our cohort was all about like really validating, getting the numbers, talking to your customers, or talking to your potential candidates, potential clients, and figuring out like what is going on in that space. Why is their role important? What are they doing to help, better the company? And how does like their hiring manager feel, or how is the hiring manager themselves feeling, now that whenever they don't have these people in or good candidate in play? And what do they feel like when they do have a good candidate? How do they measure that success and understand that? So that's a big part of it, is really understanding your persona. But then the second part of that is then going, okay, cool. Like, how many jobs are on the market, right? How many of those roles are actually active? And then and if you go and look at the jobs that are on the market, how many people are applying, right? So there's a lot, for example, right now, there's a lot of like HR and recruiting recruiters, are rec-to-rec recruiters, that are struggling right now because as soon as a recruiting position internally comes up, there's like 800 candidates in the first 3 hours. Like if you're seeing that, then your market's probably pretty saturated and you're probably not doing it. Then the other part of that is how many of your competitors are in the space. So one of the things I like to do is I look at my old companies, and see what they're doing and see like their job postings. And if there's a lot of job postings in that specific space, I go, okay, well, they're no territory, recruiting firms. I can now validate that there's opportunity there, because these companies are going out and finding these roles. And whenever someone has success in it, what happens is like the whole train comes along. So, like when I did programmatic advertising in 2015, I built like 400K in 3 months. And as soon as people started to see like, what is Will doing? Like, what is this? What's happening? And then like everybody jumped in. And so my market got screwed. That was one of the reasons why I left Cybercoders, because I was like, I can't focus on like something and actually, capitalize on it. It's really frustrating. So, you can look at that. You can see like how many people are coming after this market. And if you go on these competitor sites, look at their job boards, a lot of it's manufacturing, a lot of it's accounting, a lot of it's bio or medical professional, right? So that's where the markets are. That's where the hot markets are. So you just need to figure out what your hot markets are and then follow that. That's one way of validating it. And then lastly, like just look at economic indicators. Like read the Wall Street Journal, read the news, and hear where money is going. I have a $400 a year Crunchbase account that I've had for now 7 or 8 years. I'm like one of their first customers because they give me news and I can validate information of what's happening. And I'm following the funding. That was one of the best pieces of advice I got from my mentor at Cybercoders. Like follow the funding. And when you look at where that's all going, what location, what industry, all that stuff, go find the hottest roles in that space, and then see where there's very little candidate market for, and then go find yourself a badass candidate in that market. It's like it's pretty simple. It's not very complicated. And guess what? You're not selling, oh, I've got I help you create market maps and we do like full evaluation of your recruiting process. Like, screw that. Like, don't even come. Like, you could have that conversation post. Go present a candidate. Hey, I've got some really great candidates, fit your space. They're exactly what you want. Do you want to look at them? Yeah, good. Let's get on a phone call. Now you can talk about your other marketing, other strategies, how you do things. You can upsell, downsell, do whatever you need to do. But don't do it in that first email. That's not what you're selling. As a recruiter, you're not selling that.
Yeah. Interesting. What's the what's so when someone comes to you with their messages, what's the first thing, what's the most common mistakes that you see by recruiters?
I'll give you 3. One is because it always comes in threes. It's too long. I don't know who started it. I have a suspicion. I'm not going to name names. But someone in the space that's coaching basically said you should create these service-based emails that tell the company, your where you are and who you are and what you're about and all this. No one cares. Again, no one cares. So and then they create these long paragraphed emails. And again, I felt I'm not saying that I'm perfect, because I did this shit too. I did it and I tested it and it doesn't work. Right. So long emails. 2, they make it all about them and their service. Right. So in that same vein, they're making these long emails about their service and what they're doing and their case studies and all this garbage. It doesn't matter. Think about, you got to look at things in these first cold emails, how Nike or Apple or anybody would present a commercial to you. Now, Nike is not a great example, and Apple's kind of not as good of an example anymore because they've gotten to this point of name brand. But what was the last good advertisement you saw? And most of the time when you see those advertisements, they're not talking about themselves. They're showcasing their customer as the hero, and they're having a great time or doing something that they always wanted to do. I think about the one I think about the most is there was these little gel guns that you can shoot. And the thing I was so impressed by was the reason why I wanted it was it looked so much fun. I want that. I want to go have fun. And so it created this emotion of just being this looks like a lot of fun. What they're not saying is oh, our gel guns are, built with 3-inch plastic and, EPA certified and that. No one cares. No one. They just want to have fun, and that's the after state of the situation, right? And so they talk about themselves too much, and they don't talk about the candidate and how the candidate is going to help how that candidate and that solution is going to turn that client from a bad before state to a positive aspirational after state. And that's from Ryan Deiss. So I didn't learn this. I'm not coining this. It's not me. That's a digital marketer guru that I followed for a very long time. His name's Ryan Deiss. If you guys want to follow him, he's awesome. But you need to take that sales approach there. And then lastly, they ask for time. And I never ask for time. I ask for yes or no. So everything has to incite a yes or no question. And when I started doing that early on in my career, was like, do you want to see this resume? Yes. Is that a profile that might be interesting to you? Yes. Right. Am I wrong for thinking that this might be a priority for you? Yes. Right. And so it's like, I want to elicit either a yes or no versus a CTA that says, hey, do you have time for me to like jump on a call? Because nobody has time for you. Like not like, I run a small business. I don't have time for most people. So people call me and they're like, hey, can I get, an hour of your time to like talk about my business? Like, why would I do that? Like, not like, I'm not trying to be an asshole, but like, why would I do that? Right. So it's like, I don't have time to do that. So if you want that, like, incentivize me, pay me $99 an hour. Right. Like let's talk. We'll happily do that. Like, let's do it. But otherwise, like, I have to run a business. So I have to make money. And my wife depends on it. My kid depends on it. Like, I don't have time. So, yeah, those are the three things.
There's another thing as well that we discussed before. You went like super deep on like marketing and stuff, which I found really interesting. So I think it was the 5 levels of awareness. It was like problem aware, product aware, that sort of stuff. Can you explain a bit about that? Because I know you talked a bit about frameworks and there's loads of other stuff which I've since actually looked into because I think you sent me some stuff. But for the sake of the listeners, like, can you talk a bit about that and like the frameworks you know about?
Yeah. So in capturing leads, recruiters are terrible at it, actually, right? And it's not no fault to the recruiting space and the recruiting industry. It's just that you weren't taught it. Most recruiters kind of fell into it really early, and they were coming from like a LA Fitness or like some sort of fitness gym thing, and they were a salesperson that did really well, and they're like, oh, I'm great with people, I could be a recruiter. And one of the things I ended up finding was I'm a student through and through. I'm first and foremost a student, then I'm a coach, right? So I go and find gurus in every space: e-commerce, sales, marketing, like recruiting, obviously business development, whatever. And I try and get the perspective of what they're doing to make them successful. So I study that a lot. And one of the things that always kept on coming up in sales approaches is understanding like how you're engaging your clients or engaging your potential customer, and what stages of awareness they're in. And so stages of awareness are an unaware state, which is like where I think like something like 60% of the market is at. And that means that they're completely unaware of a problem or whatever it might be, that your solution provides. And then there's problem aware, meaning that they now understand that there is a problem and that there's something that they need to attract, right? But they don't know exactly what or pinpoint what it is. And then as a business owner, your job, or a marketer, your job is to get them from unaware to problem aware, and then keep them going down the the different stages, really seamlessly, and help them get there. And the way you do that is kind of the pull. It's the offers that you provide, and that can be anything from and the modes in which you're providing it. So like, you don't want to go to an unaware person and start emailing them. Like, that's just not right. Like, you're going to just get you're going to get put in spam. They're not going to really care. And so you need to figure out ways to get from unaware to problem aware. And that's usually, like, right now we have the benefit of social media and LinkedIn and all that stuff. And you can help them kind of agitate the problem that they might not be thinking about. And that problem aware stage, I think, is like 27% of the market or something like that. So they know that they have a problem. They don't know what the problem is, and you're helping them figure out what that problem is. From there, you pushing them into the solution aware stage. And solution aware is that, hey, I know I have a problem. I know there's a solution, but I don't know. And I know what the problem is. And I know there's a solution to that problem. I just don't know what the solution is. And so in our case, in recruiting, it's like, let's just use a CFO, right? A CFO might know that they have a balancing of the books issue. They're not hitting their deadlines. And they're realizing, hey, I need a better staff to do that. I need someone who's specialized as a CPA, for example, as tax season approaches. So they know that they need it. The solution is I could either go with a person internally, I can go with a contracted person or a fractional CPA, or I can go with some sort of accounting agency. And all those solutions have their benefits, pros and cons, and whatever it might be. So you're trying to push them, you're trying to educate them on all the solutions that are available to them, and with a tilt, right? Like, hey, like this is actually the better solution for this particular scenario that fits, like, you know, whatever it is. And so you're doing that with your candidates. And that solution aware stage, I think it's like 17% of the market, something it's like really low. And then ultimately that gets them to product aware, which if they've gone down the path, they now are at the point where they're posting a job. They said that they need somebody internally, or they're hiring somebody on contract, whichever your space is. And at product aware, you're already late to the game. And that's only like 3% of the market. So you could either have 90% of the 97% of the market, or you can have 3% of the market. And almost all recruiters focus on the 3%. Like almost all recruiters go to the job boards and they go, who's hiring for these roles? And now I'm going to go market to them, and I'm going to go show them these great candidates. And you're competing against thousands of recruiters at 3% with 3% of the market. And so you're wondering like, oh man, why is my business not working? Because you're not hitting them before they've gotten there. You're not showing them like the value of the types of candidates you have, and the candidate pools you can bring to the table before that happens. And there's ways to do it. There's different modes, different messaging, whatever it is. But ultimately, like that's the product aware stage that you want to be driving them to, but you want to be there before. You ideally want to be there in the problem and solution aware stage. But the only way you can do that is by creating content and kind of having some sort of like funnel or partnership program, or doing podcasts like this, right?
Mm.
You know, you can jump in and figure out ways to borrow audiences or do that, but like you're not doing that on an email and a cold call. You might go to a conference, for example. But I think too many recruiters focus on that 3% and then hope to get to the you aware stage, which is the last stage, and that's like, you know, very small. So
that's interesting then. So when you're like you know, sending out candidates, right, specking out candidates to try and generate business, so are you wouldn't even necessarily go after a company who are even hiring or even have conscious plans to hire for something. You would go in with like, this is a problem, this candidate can solve that problem. You weren't even probably thinking of hiring a what's it called, a programmatic marketer.
Yeah, programmatic. So I'll give you, so I've done this across multiple industries. So, but I'll give you the one that I had, like that discovered it for me, and the one I would say I had the most success in. Back in 2015, there was like thousands of advertising companies, thousands out there, and they were all getting funding. Again, I followed the funding, I followed the rounds. I was like, who's getting it? What's happening? It was all based on digital ads. And every company that was getting funding was all implementing what they called programmatic advertising platforms. And programmatic advertising platforms, basically like a marketplace for you to buy ads. We use it on Indeed right now. It's like, oh, like if like as demand goes up, you pay more. As supply goes down, you know the deal. So now Indeed does it on job boards, and I think even LinkedIn has that now too. So programmatic advertising just is a autonomous way to increase and decrease the purchasing or the pricing of the ad and the lead generation. So what I did was I found all the companies that were all the advertising companies that were out there, ad tech companies specifically, and I would look at, do they have a programmatic offering? And the first thing I did was I found, and I kind of stumbled upon this, to be honest with you. Like, so I found like the VP of product and a director of product at one of the largest programmatic players in the game. They were Pubmatic at the time. And I found another one at OpenX, which was another big player. And I found another one at another company. So I found 3. That was like my number. I was like, okay. And I found them in all different ranges of experience in product management. And so I just went to all those companies that didn't have a programmatic platform. I said, hey, I've got senior to executive candidates coming out of programmatic platforms like Pubmatic, Vidopia, whatever, yada, yada, yada. Would you want to take a look at those kinds of candidates? And I tapped into FOMO. There's this fear of missing out as the market was expanding and getting all this cash influx. A lot of these ad tech companies were trying to figure out their programmatic play. So they were like, every CEO, every VP of product, yes, 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 yes. I got a 50% reply rate on that short email.
Really?
And I like my manager at the time was like, what the hell are you doing, Will? What's happening? Like, how are you getting this many candidates? And literally it was a 1-to-1. And so at one point I had to go to my candidate or candidates and be like, hey, like, what companies do you want to work at? Because I could probably get you in. And I was like, and like they were like, oh, well, I don't really want to work at that company. And so it became one of those things where I had too much demand for the supply that I had. So then I had to go out and find more supply, right? So I was like, okay, now I'm in a good situation. And I ended up placing like something like 7 executive candidates that quarter. It was insane, like anywhere from director to VP level. And so I made like, it was like my biggest deal was like $72,000. And I was like, that's insane. Like it was nuts. Right. And so when you find that FOMO, it becomes really easy. And that's why I say on my last post, one of the posts I just recently posted is like, people think they have a really great candidate. And it's like, who gives a damn about your great candidate? Like there's a lot of great candidates out there, and not to, shit on great candidates. I'm just saying, as a business, as a recruiter, your job is to go find companies that are hiring for hot, scarce roles, so that way you can make a buck. Like that's the point. And you have to hit that market really hard. So like, no one cares that you have a great candidate. No one cares that your best friend is this badass from Carnegie Mellon and it's a product manager or a project manager at, some food company. And like, that's awesome. Like that candidate might be great, but how many food companies are hiring for project managers right now? So if you don't have those 2 things or 3 things, like I talked about, industry, hot position, and a great candidate, then you're going to be beating your head against the wall. So it's really just finding that demand in that space. I don't know if I answered your original question. Kind of went on a tangent.
I think you did. But it's all very interesting anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, so look, obviously we've covered a lot there, but I think the way to sort of an interesting way to close this off, and a question I want to ask actually is, where do you see recruitment going over the next, I don't know, 5 years? Because obviously you've mentioned ChatGPT. It's obviously big in your world, and there seems to be like a new AI tool every single month at this point.
Yeah,
leveraging ChatGPT or whatever. So where do you see things going?
I love this question because it's an answer that most of us don't want to hear. I think one of the things that happened over the last 3 years is we had this massive influx of people entering our space. And I was just talking to my wife about this. She just passed her real estate exam, or like the first part of her real estate exam. And I was like, real estate is one of the only professions that you can get a D and get a license. Like in the space. So don't worry about like testing that great, because it's just a D. But then what happens because of that D and that licensing is you get kind of like crappy real estate agents, right? Like there's a really low barrier to entry. Well, what's recruiting? Recruiting, you to get a recruiting title, you have to have a pulse. And that's it. And so now, and a voice, and shit, you don't even have to have a voice now. Like you can just go use ChatGPT. And so it's like, at the end of the day, like there's so many people that entered the market, and it's like, well, we're in a really good position now. If you stick through it, the bad ones are going to leave, right? A lot of the bad recruiters are going to go by the wayside. They're never going to enter the market again. And we're going to have a shaving off of quite a bit of few recruiters. The good ones are going to stick through it and, continue to push, really great candidates and, good fees and stuff like that. The amazing ones, though, the top tiers, are adjusting their strategy as a whole and figuring out what they need to learn and develop in their business, so that way they can compete at a higher level than anybody else. And how do they productize, as you would say, their business in a way where they can get consistent, valuable income and provide the value that everybody wants, which is fantastic candidates. Or if you're more interested in like service and operations and, you know, talent acquisition strategy, like that's all great. That's fantastic. But then sell that as your service and not the fee, which is, you know, I'm going to get you 30%. I'm going to have a candidate in here for 30%, because if you really want to create awesome talent acquisition that does strategies, that takes time. And so a company is not going to want to pay you 30% on, you know, 100 roles. They're going to want to, they want to figure out a way for you to be more of a consultant. So if you're going to sell on service, sell as a consulting service versus trying to sell as a recruiter. So I think there's going to be this big shift where you're going to see a clear differentiation from 20 to 30% fees to, hey, monthly retainers and more like a marketing agency. I'm going to come in and help you service. I'm going to come in and your tilt could be anything from like, I'm going to help you create chatbots within your HR organization that helps, you know, candidates as they come in to capture that lead, get them to tell you about what they're looking for, and ultimately, you know, have a pool of candidates for you to be able to choose from when the time is right for that type of role. You're seeing it already in LinkedIn. LinkedIn's already starting to switch to that direction, because now they have the interested in working for button, right? And so that is where things are transitioning. It's like, hey, like, let's capture leads and capture potential candidates, and we can create that service for recruiters that are internal that can then capitalize on it. And so I think we're seeing that shift, and recruiting has always been like 7 years behind marketing and sales. And I think we're now starting to see what marketing and sales had gone through happening in recruiting. It's just, and what the problem is that when it happens in recruiting, it happens really fast. Like, so it's like, it took 7 years for marketing and sales to get to this point. And then it's like, oh, now we can put it in recruiting. So like, now it's implement and we can scale, and it's just quick. And so overnight things happen. And I think that's you're going to see it overnight as demand goes up, as these economic indicators are showing 3% inflation is now at where we're at in the US. Things are going to start popping again, you know, and the people who are going to be like doing fantastic are the ones that have like there's a company called Zor AI. Their productized version of their service is they have a platform where companies can come on and just identify blue collar workers. Like, and it's really easy for them to do. It's not like it's not a crazy service. It's just like, hey, it's kind of self-serve. They pay like $500 a month, right? Or I think it's $500 a hire. And they're like, yeah, we charge super low because we don't have to put a ton of effort into, you know, the man hours, and we can sell on volume. So depending on whatever your play is, volume, relationships, talent acquisition strategy, whatever that is, like you're going to see more kind of sectored, you know, pieces to it with different offerings, not the standard 20-30% offerings. That's what I think is going to happen.
It's going to be interesting. I'll tell you one thing as well. Why? Well, I don't tell you. I'm going to ask you something. Why do you think recruitment is so far behind, like, say, tech sales, for example? Because even with, like, who was I talking to the other day? I was speaking to this recruiter the other day, and he was, like, messaging me about his cold calling script, right? And what I've realized is, like, all the stuff all the tech sales gurus talk about and all the sales trainers have been talking about. One of the favorite sales trainers on LinkedIn is a guy called Benjamin Dennehy. He's called the UK's most hated sales trainer. That's how he sort of like marketed himself. And he's doing very well at the moment.
Good branding.
I've been following him for a few years. But he's really interesting because he sort of he was a big advocate of pattern interrupts before pattern interrupts were popular. You know, go back 7 years and cold calls were, hi, my name is David Rolls. The reason I'm calling is because blah. And then you'd sort of go down. But now all the tech sales guys across the UK and the US and probably everywhere else, you know, start their calls with stuff like, this is a sales call. Let me steal 30 seconds or you can hang up now sort of thing. So anyway, people don't do that in recruitment, and recruitment's, I don't know what it is, why it is so slow to adapt stuff from, like, you know, the new stuff, the stuff that's working now.
Yeah.
Because it's this very similar job.
No, I mean, honestly, recruiting has so many correlative industries: real estate, you know, tech sales, enterprise sales. Like, it's sales in general, marketing in general. Like, that's why I take in so much, right? But I think the reason why is because there's really no, like, going back to the point of, you don't really have to have a lot to start a recruiting agency. It's the lowest barrier to entry. I don't know another business that has a lower barrier to entry. You need a computer, you need a phone, and you need some sort of sourcing tool. And now those sourcing tools are so cheap that, like, it's really simple to get in. It's just really bad recruiters in the space, and not to most of them. I don't even blame them. Most of them, I blame you if you had the opportunity to get better and then you didn't. And so I just don't. I think that a lot of it is just that sales is sexy, marketing is sexy. Recruiting has been looked like as like an HR function for so long. Like, I don't think up until probably 2018, really, like, we started seeing this transition into, like, oh, recruiting is actually the lifeblood of our business, and it's a functional piece of what we do. So, like, and then on top of that, it's like, it's based on the economy. Like, if the economy is doing bad, you're not really having a great recruiting year. Like, a lot of my clients aren't having great recruiting years, and I'm like, it's just, you know, you got to deal with it. You can start helping yourself get better right now, and you can, you know, weather the storm with some fees. But are you going to have a $1.6 million desk year? Like, one of my mentors, like, they're not doing anywhere near what they were used to doing, right? And so they had to fully transition and pivot out. So it's like, at the end of the day, it's just like, it's an old school play with a lot of old school players. So a lot of the companies are also very, like, legacy oriented. So you know, older, you know, boomers, if you will, own it, and they don't really want to, like, they don't want to fix what's not broken, right? They don't, like, I talk to recruiting agencies all the time, and I'm shocked, every single one of them, that almost all of them I talk to, I should say, almost all of them do not have some sort of cadence software or some sort of, like, you know, CRM or ATS that actually, like, you know, helps them stay on track with messaging and tracks that messaging. They do it on, like, spreadsheets and like weird stuff, and I'm like, dude, like, well, we just don't want to pay that kind of money. I'm like, it's cheap now. It's like
it's really nice.
It's like, what are we doing, guys? Like, you know, like, I'm not saying go and automate everything. Like, I don't believe in that. I think Apollo is a fantastic tool, but I'm not going to, like, bank everything on my Apollo. There's a lot of it that's still manual in what I implement. And so it's like, dude, just, like, have an automated follow-up, have something, like, you know, have, like, a LinkedIn presence, and no one's doing it because they just aren't taught it, and it wasn't broke, so they don't fix it. And then when the economy's hot, they're like, oh, we made, you know, 10 million bucks. And then, like, when the hot economy's shit, they're like, oh, well, you know, we still made 10 million bucks 2 years ago. We'll just wait for the next hot economy. Oh, the hot economy's hot again. We made another 10 million bucks. And so this constant yo-yo, and people are cool with it because, you know, a lot of the space is just composed of billers, really. Like there's no real, like, thought leaders in the space as much anymore. And the ones that are in that space, like, ended up moving to talent acquisition at, like, Google, you know, or Facebook. And, you know, so
that's actually an interesting point, because there really aren't, and I've realized this. I never really realized this because, you know, when you're working for an agency, you're just so focused on your market and what you're doing. You're not looking at you're not looking at the recruitment industry as a whole. Why would you? It'd be a waste of time.
Yeah.
But having moved into it, it's been actually fascinating how, like, so many agencies are still operating like it's 2007. And it's like, it's not even down to, like, technology. It's just of, like, you know, sales has moved on massively. How we communicate has moved on massively. How we market has moved on massively. 99% of recruiters still don't have any essence or microscopic evidence that they're building a personal brand on LinkedIn. It's such a such a dinosauric, is that a word? Well, I'm gonna make it a word.
I mean,
dinosauric.
It has a played, marketing and sales tactic, and that's and again, people wonder why they're not getting any sales right now and things aren't working for them, because the market has moved on from your traditional emails. And again, if you're gonna do that, I'm not saying you have to go build a LinkedIn brand. It helps a hell of a lot. People who are playing, like I talk about playing on hard mode a lot, right? So companies, like people play on hard mode all day long because they don't have a LinkedIn brand. But it's not that you have to. You just need to find markets that are hot. And if you're okay with jumping from market to market, that's cool. Do it. I think you can do it in a way that doesn't, stress you out and burn you out so fast. But you need to, whenever there's a hot market, these guys just move on and go do that. And it's a big part of the situation is that they just don't know, they don't have any sales and marketing skills. Like they're archaic. Like it's old timey, like yellow page. Like my dad used to take the yellow pages and call down the yellow pages. My mom, when I was at her real estate agency, she forced me as like a 17-year-old kid, sit down, call these numbers and see if they want to sell their house. And so it was like, it was all volume. It was volume. And like now the market has been like, we hate the volume approach. Google's like, stop it. You can't send these shitty emails anymore. And then everybody's just trying to figure out their workaround on it instead of just adapting. Like the thing
actually,
is,
that's what you just touched on there. Are you talking about email deliverability?
Yeah, the email deliverability, man. It's like it's the one thing that most people don't even. I have a client right now. I had the most frustrating call because they're like, we pull, 1,000 points of data a day, or 1,000 points of contact data a day per recruiter. And I was like, why? And they're like, well, because whenever we get a good candidate, we push them out to like all the like in a let's say manufacturing, we push them out to all the manufacturing companies we can find. I'm like, but can all the manufacturing companies use that candidate? Like, what space is that candidate in? Well, he's a food manufacturing processing engineer. I'm like, so you're pushing a food processing engineer to an aerospace manufacturing company? Like, do you not see the issue here? And I was like, what's your deliverability like? And then they're like, well, we use a platform, like it's a MailChimp type of platform, that just like allows us to have better deliverability because we're using their servers. I'm like, okay, what's your conversion rate? Well, we got 250 accounts last year. And I'm like, that's I did the math and it was like a 0.00005% conversion rate. And I was like, guys, like, what are you doing? Like, this is spam. Like, this is not recruiting. This is not business development. This is not sales. You're playing the volume game. That's cool. I get it. But like, you realize like you're not just setting yourself up for liability because like now GDPR standards and all this other stuff, right? Like you have, spamming laws, but like you're kind of ruining your brand. And you'll ruin it in that space really quickly with the level of people you're reaching out to. And so I don't know. It's an interesting space. Like I've never done that. Like I stopped doing, the most I ever did was like 100 a day, and that was at Cybercoders, and that felt icky. And ever since, I just don't do that. Like we maybe send out 25 emails a day, maybe, and they're very targeted. So
that's what I was taught. I was taught literally just take as much shit as you can and you just throw it out the wall.
Throw it at the wall.
Yeah. And then occasionally it would work. This is the problem. Occasionally it works.
Yeah.
And then because there's no further analysis done, it works. We did this thing. It works. Let's do that more. And that's all that happens. And so many agencies do it. But then the problem is, and the problem we're in at the moment is that's how, so let's say you started your recruitment career in 2011, right? So you've got 12 years experience at this point. You're probably like 36, I guess, something like that, right? That sort of range. Still quite young, still a millennial. But then you go set up your own agency because you're a high biller and that's what worked. And then you go do that. And, you might have got away with it at one of the big companies that's got this enormous database with this enormous reputation. And your clients just work with you because they want to work with the best.
The name.
And
the name. Yeah.
And then it doesn't work with your agency. And now everyone's struggling.
I had just got off a call with the exact person that you're talking about right now. And they're like, I did this. And on the opposite side too. Like, so this also happens on the opposite side where there's like not enough volume. Well, I worked as a relationship-based recruiter and all I did was just go out and meet people. And then I had these like great successes and I'm like, they're like, it's not working anymore. And I'm like, yeah, because you were at a bigger firm, bigger agency, you had a better name. And so you need to find your balance of volume and relationships and like solving the problem. And the only way you can do that is by like at first niching down in a hot market with hot candidates on hot titles. That's the first thing you do. Is if I was starting my business today, I would just be focusing on manufacturing and accounting and public sector. That would be the 3 spaces I'd be in, and I would find the best candidates I could possibly find within the niches in those spaces, and I'd just be like targeting, boom, 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 and AI would be another one because everybody has budget for AI right now. So boom, 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 just pushing out, and then I would be doing that on a regular basis. I'd be trying to send out anywhere from 50 to maybe 100 emails, connection requests, whatever, a day in each of those sectors, right? So yeah, you can get up to 300, 400, but it's still very targeted. But again, if I'm good and efficient and I've done the work up front, that becomes very easy to do, right? Because you'll max out your market in like 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, but it's still targeted, right? It's still very, very targeted. And then I'd run nurture campaigns and engagement and try and build out a brand in that space. And if I was building across multiple spaces, I'd have someone else on my team, VA, my wife, whoever, to be the face of that side of the brand. And then I would be the face on this side of the brand, and we would just dominate together. Like, that's how I would do it. Like, and if you did that, if you did that with some good copy and showcase that you understand the need, the pain, or whatever, had a good offering, there's no way you don't bill. There's just no way. Like, there's like just not a way. I did that, and we did that with one of our clients. He put in minimal work. I mean, like, Dave, this guy put in, like, I gave him a whole cadence. He only did the LinkedIn connection and message, like, part of the sequence. Brought in 185K worth of business, pipeline business in this first 2 weeks. It's like, boom. I had another client we did this with in the beginning of the year. He brought in 150K retainer and I think another 180K worth of pipeline business in commitment, right? But he focused on companies that he knew were hiring and that person focused on companies that he knew were hiring and used agencies. So he knew there was a market there. So he kind of had a strategic advantage. But the earlier one I had mentioned, we just tweaked his positioning statement, productized his business, exactly what we did. And we talked about like exactly what the pain was in the recruiting process for him, which was in the public sector, and specifically in like secret clearance sector, right? So it's a very specific pain that has to deal with recruiting. So that's an understandable pain that I would touch into. But he still led with candidates, right? Still led with candidates, not his service. And it was awesome. And he just crushed it. And I've got a testimonial from him, and I love that man. And I love what we were able to do together with him. So it's like, just, you don't have to have a brand. He doesn't have anything to stitch a LinkedIn branding, by the way. Two-sentence email that he did, and it worked. And it's wild. So if there's nothing that is stopping you right now, except for maybe like your agency that you work at, and the sector that you're in. That's it.
Yeah. But dude, look, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Anything else you want to talk about, or?
No, we covered a lot. We can always come back.
We've covered quite a lot.
Yeah.
We'll have to do another one. Just come back on.
Yeah, I'm happy to, man. Let me in. This is fun. I'm sweating in the lights right now. I need to get air conditioning in my room so I don't sweat through my shirt next time. So
yeah, I'm the same. When I have these 2 ring lights on, I get hot. You can see it in my head. I'm very aware of it as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have to shut the window as well because I told you that I've got like a lot of walkway down here. So like I live in a bit of a funny part of London as well. It's like it like borders with like a really dodgy part of London. It's like in North London, and we get some interesting characters around here. Like we what like all my neighbors do, right? If you want to get rid of stuff I don't know how it works in LA, but in the UK, you're meant to typically call like the council or the government or whatever to get them to come pick it up, or you take it to like a skip. Yeah. And what everyone does around here is they just leave it outside. It can be like a suitcase, a bed, like a chair, whatever. And
somebody's gonna pick it up.
Some of the people that come around, there's a lot of homeless people around here and stuff, but it's gone within like 2 hours. I was doing the washing up yesterday, and my fiance put her suitcase out, and I was just doing the washing up, and and I was just watching him, and he just comes, looks at the suitcase, tries out the zip a little bit, rolls it back and forth, and he's like, "This is mine." And he was just walking down the street with our suitcase, and I was just like, "It's such a convenient way." But anyway, my point is,
like that in LA
there's lots of noise.
Yeah, no, it's I just get the boob sweat, like right here, like you'll start seeing moisture.
I'm leaving the symbol.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. It's just like all my cleavage is like just whoo. So
yeah,
so I gotta get the air conditioner. Oh man, but yeah, no, it's been fun. If anybody wants to find me or reach out to me, like they can just reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's like my main way of connecting with people. We also have a BD cohort, we have a community that we're building out right now that I'm super excited about. We're launching next week. That will be kind of like a more paid for community. But if you just want free tips and advice, we also have our newsletter, RWD, Recruiting with Dynamite, which is funny because like you have yours, RWD. We're 2 RWDs working together. So
yeah, I actually just changed mine. Funny you mentioned that.
Did you?
I literally just changed mine. Yeah, because I just didn't. I don't know. It was like because it's always been Recruit with Dave, and that's that was my TikTok page, and everything was to Recruit with Dave. But I got to a point where I was like, I don't think it's really relates to what I do anymore because it's like people are like, "What? So do you recruit or like what?" I don't understand, and I'm like, no, I don't really anymore because I started it as like because of what I've done has evolved. I've completely changed my company name to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But this is like what happens with someone who's basically got ADHD or whatever. I'm actually getting tested for that as well. Starts a business. Everything changes all the time. So.
I have the word like so I set up our logo. So funny story. Before I let you go, our logo is kind of crazy. And the reason why it was crazy is because I wanted it to be crazy because I know that I'm going to want to change it over time. So the idea was that I would start the newsletter and that would be like version 1.0 of my business. It'd be kind of crazy, kind of weird. And then as we progress into season 2 of our newsletter and we progress into more offerings, our logo is going to change with it. So our logo is going to like, we're finishing up the final pieces on the next logo, which is going to come out with season 2 of the newsletter. And it's a more refined version of that logo. So it's like, you start to see a little bit more kind of structure to the face and what's happening on it. Like, it's not just like a big splat with like, you can barely tell that. So I'm ADHD all the way. Shout out to all my neurodivergence. It's just like my brain just is constantly on tangents. And if you're listening to this, you probably saw it a few times or heard it a few times when I was talking. So it's like, it goes from like one spot and then it's like, oh, squirrel, let's talk about that. Like, that's cool. So yeah, but yeah, man, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Have me on anytime. Let me know, and I'm happy to jump on. We'll get more like into the tactical stuff if you want to.
Yeah, sure, man. We can just talk about comedy again.